Oh, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Gentlemen, what the fuck is up today? Oh, here comes my doggy. He got excited. Because, why? Because we're here live with you today on Sunday, as promised, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for War Story Sunday with Papa C. What's up, what's up, what's up, everybody? Of course, I am your host, the one, the only, Corey Capella. Last week, where did we leave off? Well, we left off deploying to Afghanistan. We did a little bit of training before deploying to Afghanistan. That was pretty cool. Got all geared up, got ready to rock and roll, hopped on the old aircraft and headed over to Afghanistan, only to find out the location that I was going to was kind of crappy. And I wasn't pleased. We were literally going out in the middle of nowhere. Out to Buji Bast Pass is where I was going to with India Company, the company that I really did not want to work with. Now, I'll save my conspiracy theories for that one as to someone that was in charge of me placing me with the company that I didn't want to be with. But it's okay. We'll just leave it there. No big deal. No big deal. However, end up at Buji Bast Pass, kind of the middle of nowhere, out in Farah province. Not much going on. We have the company of India, which is split in half. About 10 clicks north is one of my other teammates who's operating on his own at his base at the northernmost point. I remembered the name of the place that Jesus was at, but then I forgot it because I don't think it was right. I think I said it was like Kareem or something like that. That's not what it is. It's not Musa Kayla, because I'll tell you about Musa Kayla today. So, cool stuff. Get there. Told you guys about how it's kind of exposed, right? We have two big peaks that are in front of us. And then on the other side of each peak, right? So these aren't like gigantic mountains. These are like, I don't want to call them hills because they're not hills. They're very like, craggy. Like they're 1,000 foot, 1,500 foot elevation, just big peaks coming out, right? And then we have kind of the basin that we're in where Buji, right? The name of the base, that's what we called it. Buji is at. And then on the other side of it is the Wadi. And then a little bit further south is the town that we call Buji, right? The actual village. And then, like I said, the Wadi goes up north to the other base that Matt was at. And the rest of India. Off to the west, I think they were probably about 25 clicks away. That's where Jesus was at with Kilo Company. I believe it was Kilo. Anyway, we start operating, and I'm telling you guys, like, we're in the middle of fucking nowhere. There's no main bases around for like 25 to maybe 50. I think it's probably a good 50 clicks, right? We literally, it's crazy. I didn't expect this, right? We were on like pure survival mode when we were out there, right? We had to ration everything. We had no real amenities. We had to burn our shit. We had to burn our shit in barrels. There were no showers. We had to do our own kind of like bottled water shower or baby wipe. When we brushed our teeth or we took a piss, we pissed in and brushed our teeth and spit into a pit with rocks that we would just kind of like throw some water on that we could. We lived in tents, not like, so we'd have like Hesco, right? And then we'd put like a tent above it and then we'd like sandbag the top of it. The base was probably like, I guess in like meter wise, like 200 meters by 200 meters maybe, right? So it was like a little square kind of thing that we had set up. Yeah, that was it. It was crazy. We were literally living in fucking wild, wild west. Craziness. Whenever we would get a supply that needed to come in, we literally had to coordinate with the Air Force to drop off our cargo. And it's not like they were landing. They were like, no kidding, like pushing that shit out of the back of an airplane and having it fucking parachute down to us. And holy fuck, what a mess that was. Like all of our water, all of our chow, all of our supplies that we needed, you know, even some, like, I think last time I think I said kerosene, but I think we were actually using diesel. I don't fucking remember. I'm not a generator mechanic or any of that shit, so I don't know. Either way, that's bougie, right? So we don't really left seat, right seat with anybody that well because there's not too much going on. Set up my spot in the COC, get all my stuff set up as far as getting ready to like shoot out my information reports and all that other stuff. Most of the people at this point in time know me because we've already trained and they were kind of told that I was coming in there. And then we start going on our ops, right? And now the thing was, it was Captain Pat McKinley, I think his name was the company commander, right? Captain Pat McKinley. Everyone kind of like blew this guy's dick a little bit because I believe he was a Mustang. I believe he was prior enlisted, or I might be getting that wrong, or I know for a fact this part's true. I believe he went through MARSOC's assessment and selection, and I think he turned down MARSOC in order to just go and be an infantry commander. So he had a reputation of being a badass kind of thing. I think he was a geek beforehand, though. I think he was like a intel analyst or something beforehand when he was enlisted. Kind of a geeky dude, though, to be honest with you. He had a chip on his shoulder, too. And he came into Bougie, and he thought that he was going to fucking just rock and roll, right? So we instantaneously start going out on ops, which means we're going to go out and we're going to do different types of patrols. We're doing a bunch of foot patrols, and then we're doing a lot of mobile patrols. And so we're kind of running like skeleton crew back on base, and most of our guys are out. We got our sniper teams that are pushing out. They're sitting on the peaks, or they're going and they're pushing out and they're reconning further up north to see what's going on in the other villages. Different squads are on different rotations, and they're going out night and day kind of thing. Some are going out on like ranger patrols, and they're going a little bit further, and they're staying overnight and then coming back. And then others are just kind of doing like presence patrols where we're going into like Bougie, or we're crossing the Wadi and we're going over. We also have a machine gun team that's up on the top of the peak that's kind of looking at the Southern Valley in order to keep an eye on who is placing IEDs or what's kind of going on. Now, it was kind of weird for me because it's like, what role do I take? I had to borrow the interpreter from the company and the interpreters that were kind of sticking around from the last ones. One of the interpreters that I had, though, pretty crazy. He was actually an actor who lived in L.A., and he was actually, he was in the first Iron Man movie, I believe, and he was very proud of that. He wouldn't let us forget that part, and he would actually show us a bunch of times. He played one of the terrorists when like Tony Stark got captured or something like that. Pretty cool. But the problem with him is he actually ended up getting converted. And we started to have some problems. He was starting to get like pretty extremist, like big deep into Islam when he got back over there. Like being in the motherland, he started to feel guilty. And he kind of started to turn on us. So it was weird. We had to fire him quickly and deal with that one. So that was crazy. Mainly, I just started like sitting in shuras. So a shura is a meeting of the elders where we all come together. This is like a big thing to do, like part of like the Pashtun Wali. That means like the way of the Pashtuns, was to do these like tribal councils and talk. So all the elders would gather and they'd bring some of their like chai boys and stuff like that, and we'd all sit in a circle and we would discuss things. But the thing is, most of the time nothing would get accomplished because these people are really, really, really good. Like if you want to know and understand like hedging your bets, like these guys are really good at like fence sitting and like using negotiations in order to really get nowhere. They're good at like I said, fence sitting. They'll come there and they'll go through the it's very political is really what it comes down to. They'll come there and they'll make a hoopla of like, hey, we're coming here to do a shura and we're kind of up in arms and all this stuff. But they won't give any information about the Taliban because the fact of the matter is they're really the Taliban, right? They're working, like, this is the thing that we have to understand about the Taliban, right? Is that all of them are Taliban. And then all of them are not Taliban in a way, right? The Taliban was never really, it wasn't like Al-Qaeda where it was a supposed like actual regime of people that were coming in there and they were under one flag. The Taliban were just the Pashtuns in a way, right? Some of them were just getting paid to be warriors. Some of them were just being, farmers. But your brother might be Taliban and he might be getting paid to do that, and that was part of the hustle. So dude over here isn't going to tell us what's going on. And then not to mention, you got to remember, like, we are, in their eyes, an invading force. We're coming into their country, and we're telling them what they can and can't do. So they're like, yeah, fuck these guys. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? We're going to get what we can from them and all this other stuff. So did a couple shuras, sat in there, listened to some of their gripes, was able to kind of deduce who was, like, the leader and in charge of all this stuff. Like, really start to break down and understand. And then just for me personally, I was able to kind of start to deduce what was really going on, right? Reading between the lines. The cool part about me not being able to understand the language was I got to sit there and really watch like body language and look at their eyes and see what was going on. Like what truths they were telling me through their body. Cause that's really, I mean, honestly, NLP, all this other stuff that people talk about, that's one of the best forms, excuse me. Ugh. That's one of the best ways to tell what's going on whether people are being honest and truthful with you or not. And, the thing is with most of these people is they really didn't care. They weren't on our team, but they would tell us they were on our team, right? As much as anyone would with an invading force, like I said. So, long story short, they start talking about how they want more schools and they want better roads and they want hospitals and all this other stuff. And then they're like, but, if you do that, then the Taliban are going to come in here more, right? And they're going to cause a lot of trouble and damage to our towns and villages. So we want all this stuff, and that's what you Americans need to give us, but we can't have them. You know what I mean? So, like I said, they're fence sitters. They're playing the game kind of thing. And then they always try to, like, put in some rules, right? They're like, you guys keep driving your trucks around here and all this other stuff. We don't like that because it kicks up all the dust and they're loud and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, that's kind of how we do business, man. Like, don't worry about it. Really what they don't want us using the trucks is what it comes down to, right? Because we got a little bit of a disadvantage. We got a bit of an advantage and they don't. They have a disadvantage. And we're like, well, we'll stop using trucks when people stop putting IEDs outside or in the roads and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll do what we can. It's like, okay, well, we know that they're moving and making HME and they're putting in the roads over here. You need to tell us who's doing it. It's like, oh, they come in the night and they, they wear these masks so we can't identify who they are, like these night ninjas. These guys are fucking totally lying to us, right? Because it's like we drove that road last night and there's no IED, and now there's an IED over there, right? Like, it wasn't the nighttime, bro. It wasn't what's going on. Not to mention, we have night vision, surveillance, all this other stuff, right? We have all this shit. Like, no, like. We saw who the kid was that was doing it. He's 14-year-old fucking Malik over there, right? Like, anyway. So, starting to get the lay of the land, putting in my reports to kind of report on who the tribal elders are and all this other stuff. Then we're like, hey, let's go out and do a presence patrol in Bougie just so we can learn. So this is like week 1. I'm like 3 or 4 days in. All right, first presence patrol, going out on a patrol. All excited, you know, because like going and doing your first real outside the wire fucking mission. Bougie's like 800 meters south of us. Just a small little village outside. So like everything's kind of like mud huts. You could probably tell it's like a village of maybe like 200 to 300 people. Outside of the village, like surrounding the village, is mostly like farmland. That's where they're growing the opium. Huge fields of opium, just swaths. And we're like right at the time frame where they're starting to score. They're starting to score the opium pods, right? So if you guys haven't ever seen like an opium pod, it's like this little bulb. And what they do is they'll go through and they'll use like this fork like razor. It looks like a fork, but it's like more teeth. And they'll score the outsides of it and it'll start to like drip the opium out of it. So I don't know if you guys have seen like Game of Thrones, but they call it milk of the poppy. That's exactly what it looks like, right? It's a poppy. And that milk, right, is literally opium. That's what it is, all this white stuff. And, you know, you could dry it down and refine it and do all sorts of stuff. And that's what turns into heroin and all that other shit, right? So that's what they do is they start milking these things in a way by scoring them and gorges them and all that shit. And of course, before we go out, we get a full-blown brief again of, hey, listen, when you guys are walking through the poppy fields and all this other stuff, do not like harm the fields. Don't do anything. Like, that's not your job. This is how these people make a living, so don't mess with their living. Like, wink, wink. Long story. I'll get to that shit later of like the wink, wink, so don't worry about it. So this is my first time actually going out into the village. I think we're probably like a team of like 17, 18 people, maybe a little bit more. I forgot his name. Fucking staff sergeant. Oh, it just popped into my head and now it's out. Good dude though. He led us out there for our first one. The platoon sergeant actually was out on this patrol. We go out there. I'm kind of like tagging along. I'm like middle of the pack kind of deal. Good dispersion. Everything we do is in a ranger file, which is unlike how we used to do business. Like when we go through Marine Corps boot camp training and stuff like that, we learn how to do a column. So a column is like a stacked, like a zigzag, right? So we're all like 5 meters apart and we have like 2 rows. A ranger file is literally we're all just one behind each other, right? And we try to do like a 5 to 10 meter dispersion. And then we're constantly doing like checking your 6 and doing like full 360s to kind of like turn around and make sure everything's good. But the reason for the ranger files is this. Now that we're out there in Afghanistan, this is some of the stuff that we learned to do is, you know, not a lot of the IEDs are out there just for the vehicles. They're actually, there's a lot of anti-personnel IEDs. They'll usually do like 10 pounds of HME. Sometimes they'll do 40 in order to really make sure that it causes an impact. All pressure plate. Well, I shouldn't say all. Sometimes they do remote det, which is a little bit harder to do. And then, like I said, sometimes they do like a pull string, but they have to be there and watch. So we do ranger file in order to reduce casualties, because if everyone's walking in the same line at least and there's a pressure plate, then, you know, it reduces the odds of multiple people getting harmed. Kind of scary thing to think about. But so we're walking in ranger file. It's a little different from how we were trained to do business, but we adopted that quickly. Go out to Bougie, and it's like my first interaction with the people, the first people that we come across. You know, and of course the thing is too, these people don't like us. They don't like us being there. They don't want us going through their fucking village. They don't want us like kicking indoors or doing any of this stuff. So, and we're not on a raid, so we're not really doing any of this stuff. We're just doing a presence patrol. We're letting our presence be known. If we see anything that's kind of weird or out of whatever, we might fucking go and investigate, and that's about it. But that's essentially what we're doing is we're just policing, and we're doing COIN, counterinsurgency operations, where we're trying to like befriend the locals and all this other stuff and kind of let them know that we're there and all this other crap, right? So we go out. First people we come across are a bunch of farmers. It's crazy. And they're literally making some shlambe in the river, the little creek that they have there. Now, shlambe is a little like yogurt drink. So these people literally live off of like goats, right? Middle of fucking nowhere. So everything is lived off of like what they grow and what they buy and pretty much what they harvest from, their livestock and all this stuff. So they'll literally like milk a goat right there, mix it with some cold water, throw some like cilantro and some lime or something. I think it was like cilantro. It was like a cilantro and something else. And it turns into like this custardy, kind of like water. It's almost like a horchata, but not with anything like cinnamon or sweet. It's like like a goat milk kind of, like I'm describing like the consistency of like a horchata, right? But it's like kind of bitter and creamy at the same time. And they're sitting there and they're just like, they got this like metal bowl that I would normally like mix like a salad in. And they're sitting there just kind of like whipping it up with their fingers and just throwing the ingredients in right there. And of course, everything that they do, they're always squatting, right? They always squat. That's what they do to sit in a way, is they squat in a deep squat position. And they're just sitting there mixing it up. And I look at them, I'm like, what is, like, I kind of give him the head nod, like, what is that? And like, he reaches out and he's like, you want some kind of deal, right? And I was like, yeah, fuck it. So I go over there and I fucking take my helmet off and, the squat halts and all this stuff, because, part of my job is to go and like communicate with these people and all this other stuff. So we halt and I'm sitting there and, chatting with these guys through interpreter and all this other stuff. And they're like, come on, drink, And I was like, all right. So I drink this stuff and it actually wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible. It's not anything that most Americans would ever try, is all I got to say, especially the way that it was made. But, here you are in the middle of fucking nowhere and there's not a lot of fresh, like, we're not eating a lot of fresh stuff. We're eating MREs and like hot bottled water and all this other stuff. So this dude like offers you like this fresh drink that they use to kind of like, that's what they use is like their Gatorade. Right? It's their thirst quencher and refresher. That's what they do, is make shlambe, right? So that was like my first experience with these Afghan people. Go further into the village and everyone comes out now. Like they see that we're walking in. So all the kids come out and all the people come out and they're like, hey, like all the Americans, and of course they're creating like a hoopla in order to make sure they meet us out there so that they can go and kind of hide and do whatever, right? So most of our like security detail and stuff like that's keeping an eye out for all this stuff and making sure we're not going to get ambushed. And we kind of sit there and we start talking to these people. Like I said, it was my first time out. So I'm carrying like a GPS, like a little, not TomTom, it's a little Garmin, like handheld GPS. I got my camera and stuff like that, and I actually put them in my dump pouch and didn't like actually like secure it to my body because I wanted to be able to like reach and kind of do different stuff. Take off my helmet and I start sitting down and I'm like hanging out with all the kids and all this stuff, and like the kids are coming over here and like touching my hair and doing all this other stuff, and like it was crazy, right? And they're like picking at all my gear and all this other stuff and like looking at everything and touching everything, and it's kind of crazy. And all the people are kind of doing the same thing and they're all excited that we're there, but at the same time, like I said, you could tell that they just don't really give a fuck. They don't really care. Like they play that they care, but they don't really care. They're like, get the fuck out of here kind of thing, right? So anyway, we go around and we do a little bit more of our patrol after putting stuff on, just kind of check it out, get a lay of the land. I'm mentally like graphing where all these locations are, where the, what the fuck, again, the name of the church. Oh, how am I forgetting this? Anyway, mosque. There we go. Where the mosques are, where there's like storage facilities, right? Like where they might be storing different things, because that's obviously an idea where they're probably storing some. Here's a big downfall, right? So they're farmers, But in order for them to make HME, the homemade explosives, they're using a lot of like urea nitrate and ammonia nitrate, right? And what's happening now is we're trying to get them to use more of the urea because the ammonia or the ammonium nitrate that they use for their fertilizers is easier to turn into HME. So we're really on the lookout for the ammonia nitrate and all this other stuff and palm jugs and like, reused or whatever wiring, right? Those are the kind of ideas that we get from them, how they're building HME. So we're kind of like on the lookout for some of that stuff. Very difficult though, because like I said, these are all like just things that they're using for their farming. So really difficult spot that we're in. Not seeing anything too crazy. There's not really too many shady characters, any of this other stuff. So we decided to head back after about an hour or two of being on patrol for our first patrol. And as I'm leaving, I'm like, oh, I want to take a photo of like something. And I reach in my dump pouch and my fucking camera's missing. Same with my GPS. And I'm like, these little fucking kids, man. These little fucking pickpocketing motherfuckers, while they're sitting there picking up my gear, one other kid was reaching in my dump pouch and moved this shit out. And I was like, fuck. And I halted the squad, and I was super embarrassed. I was like, fuck, I need that, right? Because that's how I'm going to, like, track sources and stuff like that, do different things with my GPS. And I was like, fuck. I halted the squad. I went and talked to the platoon sergeant. I was like, dude, we got to go back. So grabbed my interpreter, and the first elder that I came across, I was like, hey. I was like, your kids lifted some stuff off me. I was like, I'm one of the bosses right now. You guys welcomed me here, right? That was kind of the thing too, is they were like, even the squad, everyone was like, they were acting as though I was the boss, right? I was like, I'm one of the bosses over there at the base, and your kids took something from me. And I want it back so that we don't have any trouble, right? So it was kind of good because it worked out in my favor to kind of test these guys to see what they would do. And it was crazy because right in that moment, they like the elders like whistled, and like whistles at like one of the punk kids, right? That like he knew was like a little troublemaker, and he starts fucking like right in front of me, like with his finger and wagging his finger and all this other stuff, and he like tells him and he points and he's like, go and get it, right? And as like the kid's running away or like going to get it, like he's not moving fast enough, and the elders like start picking up rocks and like throwing rocks at these kids and like all this other shit. I'm like, holy fuck, these guys are gangster, like no shit, like pelting kids with rocks. And he's like, don't worry about it, like he's a little punk ass anyway, he deserves it, kind of deal, right? Like just looking at me like that, dude. It was fucking crazy. And then literally 2 minutes later, these fucking kids come back with my camera and my fucking GPS, like crazy. I was fucking lucky. I probably would have gotten in trouble for it, but all this other stuff. It didn't have any data on it or anything like that, but I was still fucking like, damn, I need that gear. Learned a valuable lesson there, but at the same time, it worked out for the better because it really like solidified, like, hey, we're not going to tolerate that type of shit. I kind of got to whip my dick out at that same time. He got to kind of prove certain things too, and it was just really cool, kind of like cultural thing. So that was my first patrol. So we get back, I kind of like hot wash, I drop some schematics and all this other stuff, push that through as like, report, talking about who I met there and what the lay of the land was and what the overall temperature was. Had about 2 or 3 more, patrols set up to go to different areas. One of them was actually going to be not on foot, but a mobile going up north to go and visit Matt. Do a little hot wash and debrief too there with him. All this other stuff. And rock and roll from there. Go through and do all this other stuff. Like I said, nothing too crazy is going on. Except, Pat McKinley, the captain, his plan isn't working out too well for what's going on. Because up to this point, we've actually hit 2 IEDs now in our vehicles. And the IEDs have decimated the 2 trucks. Like, we're literally a week and a half in, week 2.5 in. No injuries, luckily, but not good, right? We lost 2 trucks out of, like, the 10 trucks that we had there. And, like, this isn't good. We don't have any support there, really. We can't bring any new trucks in. We don't have any way of, like, tire flew off of the fucking Matt V. So this thing's like done. Crazy. I end up getting word here quickly because nothing's really going on that we're going to be moving here soon, right? Some stuff's coming down. I'm getting reports via email from my OIC and, through the intel cycle. Like, we're starting to hear whispers about moving 3-7 out of Bougie Bast and where Jesus is at, getting people out of there. We're going to get a replacement of Georgians, right? The Georgian military are going to come in and they're going to kind of take over control because we're hearing rumors about some pretty gnarly stuff outside of Musa Kayla. No one's dropping word just yet, but we're starting to track some of the SIG events, right? Significant events that's happening in Afghanistan via the intel cycle. And we start to see kind of like where the hot spots are, right? So the whispers are like, oh, it's outside of like Lashkar Gah and Musa Kayla and Marja, right? So the whispers start happening, right? We're like, oh shoot, Sangin, like people are saying Sangin. I'm like, oh my God, Sangin, what? Like start kind of looking it up and hearing and looking at some of the SIGINTs, and I'm like, I get that out of my head kind of deal. Don't want to get all fucking pumped up for it kind of deal, you know what I'm saying? And then I get a call from my OIC, and he's like, hey, get all your gear packed up right now because you're leaving. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what's going on? He said, Kilo is moving out of that location to the west, and when they're coming to bypass you, you're going out on a ride with a certain part of this team, right, to go out on, you're going to stop at Delaram first. You guys are going to resupply and all this other stuff, and then you're going to go to like Musa Kayla, Nowzad, and Lashkar Gah on a patrol with Kilo. And I was like, sick. Okay, cool. We're getting closer to Marja now. I look at some of the reporting that's going on out of Musa Kayla, Nowzad, and Lashkar Gah, right? And there's like some pretty serious things going on, right? Because we're getting closer to the Helmand River now as we go there. And the Helmand River is kind of how they traffic the majority of their stuff, right? I mean, it's a big deal. It's the biggest body of water that they have moving around, right? So a lot of activity goes on around that area, right? But it's still, I would say it's probably still 20 miles, let's say 20 miles, 20 clicks west of the Helmand River, but there's a lot of basins and different stuff like that and a lot of activity. So anyway, they're like, hey, Kilo's going to be coming through in about a week. So just have your stuff ready and sit tight. Go on a few more ops with India, but just know that you and your interpreter are going to push out, right? Or sorry, no, they're like, hey, we'll have an interpreter for you when you get back here. I was like, all right, cool. So anyway, still run some operations out of Bougie Bast. We go out on a night raid we go out on a nighttime patrol or something like that because we actually had one patrol that came across. That's what it was. They came across like these people that were like a moving caravan, right? It was kind of stupid, right? They lived in yurts. What they would do is they'd like set up their yurt and they'd travel with their camels and different shit, and then they move. Like they're nomads. And they searched the yurt and they found like an AK-47 with like 3 magazines. So, at the time these guys weren't supposed to have weapons. That was kind of like an agreement that we told them, which, to be honest with you, me personally, I don't believe in. However, that's what it was told, was like, hey, if you have guns, we're going to assume that you are Taliban. So therefore, we're going to confiscate your weapons and, obviously detain you. So they're like, Tucker, we need you out here ASAP. So we hopped in a Matt V, drove out there like 45 minutes. Some of the worst fucking terrain ever. We were going over all like these moguls and shit like this. It was crazy, like really terrible. I get out there, it's like fucking, it's dusk, right? About to be fucking pitch black. Again, I already told you guys about where we're at. Like, pitch black, pitch black. Like, you can't see shit, right? There's no moon. There's no nothing. And then that's when we call in, right? So we're on, like, another, I think we're north. Yeah, we went north. And we went on the other side of this mountain range or whatever. And, you know, Bougie was like 10 miles, 10 clicks away. And we're like, yo, we can't see shit. There might be some other people out here. And then that's when we called in our loom, right? And the cool thing was we had our mortars pretty much set up. I think we had 88s. I don't know if they did 88s or the 105s that day. But we shot off loom canisters all night to kind of help us out. That was pretty fucking crazy. Those things like light up the sky for a couple minutes and all this other stuff. They're on parachutes and they just flare out kind of deal. So we detain these guys, right? These two fucking guys. And we cuff them. We bag them. You know, actually we put goggles on them now. We don't put bags over their heads. But we'll just call it bagging them. We fucking cuff these dudes, throw them in the Mat V, and it's funny because every time we deal with these guys, like these guys were pretty bad dudes. You could tell that they were less than reputable. It's like if like Wild Wild West, you know, these guys were like outlaws. Don't know if they were necessarily Taliban, but you know, these guys were outlaws or whatever. So we bring them back, and I gotta like print them and photograph them and all this other stuff, but before we do any of that, literally we're driving, right? And I don't think this guy has definitely never been in a vehicle or like the vehicle that we're in. And he's sitting there like fucking, he's faking it, right? He's trying to make me feel sympathy or make us feel sympathy. So he starts like gagging on himself and like getting himself like spitting things up and doing all sorts of shit, like pretending to puke and getting like car sick and all this crap. It's fucking heinous. So when we get back, we gotta fucking change him and put him in some clothes, but we don't have any of his clothes. All we got is American clothes, so we got like what the USO donated to us, and we kept his original stuff on and tried to like wash it and do what we could. But anyway, we gave him some like I think there was like it was so funny, dude. It was like an American like bedazzled jean jacket. With like an American flag on it or something like that. And then we gave that to him if he wanted to wear it. Because we really didn't have anything out there accessory wise. So had to go and do some interrogations on that dude, on both of those guys, and find out, you know, what they were doing and all this other stuff. And I think long story short with those two guys is like I think we sent them in to get we had a Osprey come in and pick him up and take him back to Delaram for detention and interrogation and stuff, but they didn't really have anything of value. They wouldn't even really talk, and it was more just like taking care of them. It was almost like it was more of a burden. Anyway, get the word now that Kilo's coming, so it's like, hey, get your shit ready. Like, let's go. They're coming to get you. Get picked up from Kilo. I get thrown in a 7-ton. Get to ride shotgun in a 7-ton with these two Lance Corporals. And we are on our way now to Delaram to go and rest for a couple days and resupply, right? Didn't need to reload. There wasn't a shot fired the entire time I was out there, except for one ND, I think. And just kind of chill out and get ready to go on this fucking op. So I go back and, you know, I talk to my lieutenant and I talk to my chief, and they give me kind of a little brief of what's going on, but I'm mostly hanging out with those guys. Sit there for a couple days, get to have my first shower in a while. It was like 3 weeks up to this point. Get to go eat some hot chow, which was awesome. Man, I'll tell you what, a fucking shower after not showering for that long was so great. So great. It's like the best feeling in the world. Get some hot running water. Get to sleep for a little bit, kind of rest up. And then we push out. Got to get a little bit of intel, find out about this bazaar. There was a bazaar, like the area that we're going to. I forgot the name of the bazaar. It's actually a pretty popular place if you look it up. But we're going into that area. We're going into an area where there's a lot more militants. This time we're getting a SIGINT team to come along with us as well, because a lot of these guys are doing and using ICAMs, right? ICOM, right? They're using these walkie-talkies that we're able to kind of like pick up or whatever. I don't know exactly what happens that way, but we're able to kind of listen to the chatter that way and figure out what's going on. There's actually a structure to the Taliban where we're going, so there's different levels of hierarchy. And there's no kidding, like actual Taliban. Like whereas where I was at in like Buji, like I said, Taliban wasn't really there, but people were kind of like on the same team as the Taliban, but they weren't actual like warriors or fighters of the Taliban, if that makes sense. Like the Taliban, like someone would be like, hey, I put some bombs in the road, and like they'd get some money wired to them or something like that. But there was like no military structure because there wasn't a lot going on out there, right? Whereas here, going into like Musa Kela, Nowzad, and Lashkar Gah, there's actually, no kidding, some stuff, right? So we're getting all pumped up. Like I said, moving out with Kilo in the 7-ton with, I actually became pretty good friends with this guy, Justin Blaschke. He was a Lance Corporal at the time. I forgot who my driver was. But we're getting ready to go and push out for 3 weeks to go and do, a mobile op out there. We had EOD attached to us. Man, I forgot the names of the guys. Starkey, I think, and a few other guys. Good EOD techs. We're going out. The entire company, probably like 40 or 50 trucks total. Maybe, yeah, I'd say like 40, right? And getting ready to go out on this like big mobile op. We were like a moving fucking cavalry. It was fucking epic. So it takes us like a day or two to get out there. I think they said that there's like some people that were a part of Kilo that had stayed back on Delaram and had already done this kind of trek. And they've already gotten in like engagement in certain areas, so they kind of know a little bit. And I'm with some of the guys like in our convoy, right? There's some of the guys that have already been there, so we kind of like know where to go and stage. The crazy thing about what we do at night is we literally like sit in a 360, and that's how we sleep, right? We'll go in the middle of the desert and we'll stop. We don't have like a base or a camp to go back to. We're just literally like cruising and rolling the entire time, bouncing up and down these wadis and stuff like that, and going from like different location to different location. And if we're getting any like signals intelligence, or if we're getting any type of intelligence from any fucking direction, from Musa Kela, people tell, or yeah, not just Musa Kela, but man, I can't remember names today. I'm retarded. Marja, like what we're trying to do, our whole point is, the reason what we're doing is we're trying to stay to the west and to the north of Marja, and we're trying to pressure the guys, right, the Taliban, from leaving Marja and catching any of the bad guys that are trying to get out and escape, right? Because what was going on is I think we had 3 battalions in Marja, one to the north, one to the west, and one to the south. And, it was just a lot for those 3 battalions, even though it was 3 battalions. It was a lot for them. So we came in and it's what we called taking a little of the pressure off. And that's what our job was to do, was to take a little pressure off. And what I like to call it was teeth cutting. We were going out there to get our teeth cut. We were going out there to get our teeth cut before going into Sangin, because 3-7 was getting slated to go into Sangin, Afghanistan, and we'll get there here in a little bit. So, like I said, go out to Musa Kela, Nowzad, and Lashkar Gah. The first place we stop at is a super small little village. But the week before, one little faction of Kilo was out there, and they received like some small machine gun fire and sniper fire when they're sitting out there. So they brought me out there, and we went on patrol. We parked outside, right, of their little village, and we went on patrol in there to go and see who like the nefarious actors were, right? Because you can kind of tell. It's crazy. You could tell who the bad guys were just by looking at them. So we went on patrol, and you could kind of see who was like way, way, way different of personalities too in Musa Kayla than they were in Bougie, right? Bougie, they were at least people that were like smile and wave to you and offer you like Shalom Bay, and they're like, oh, hey, American, thank you, and all this other stuff. Here, people were like, hey. And that was it. Like, they were like, and then other people back there would like, they would be looking at you and they're like, we need to fucking murder you. Right? It was crazy. Totally different lay of the land. Like, people didn't want to talk to you, and they wanted, like, you could tell. And I was like, excited. I was excited because, like, these guys were fucking warriors. Like, you could tell they wanted to fight. And I was wanting to fight too. So, Blaschke and a couple of these guys are like, dude, you see? Like, could you tell? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, those guys are no good. So we go back to this. I go back to the 7-ton, Blaschke and I do, and then like the rest of the team do, and we're all kind of like set up in our 360. And we're I think it's probably like 4 or 5 o'clock at night now. The sun is getting ready to set over the mountains and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden, all you hear is just right? And I was like, holy fuck. What the fuck was that? And we get on the fucking chatter, and everyone's like, 105, 105. Or, yeah, was it a 105? I think it's yeah. So anyway, they're like 105 shell to our fucking 8 o'clock. And all of a sudden you hear the fucking turret machine guns just going off like, gah, 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 gah. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck's going on? And like Blaschke's like, he's got his little headset, and he's like, we just got hit by a 105 shell. Targets to our 8 o'clock, 3 military age males getting into a white, I mean, like they had like a white Corolla. Heading into a white Corolla, 3 mopeds, 2 heading north, mopeds heading north, white Corolla heading to the south, targets. And all of a sudden just like fucking rumbles of the fucking diesel trucks, and we just fucking gun it after this white Toyota Corolla. And this dude is literally fucking jetting. You can see 2 military age males in the seats fucking just rally car racing over and trying to get into this wadi and all this other stuff, and we're fucking chasing after him. He's got like a pretty good head start on us as we're going. 50 cal gunner is trying to fucking take out the back tire, not kill these guys, because we don't know, right? We don't know that they did anything. So we get into our first chase. He heads down into the wadi, and it's kind of steep for us and all this other stuff. And I think 2 of our vehicles out of like the 8 are like way far ahead, and the rest of them are still back there. So we ended up calling it off, letting them go, and heading back to our little 360 that we had set up there. Fun little rush at the time, right? We went and looked at the explosion. So what had happened, and the way that they do it is they were using these old rocket shells, right? These old artillery shells. And they stuff it full of gunpowder and all this other shit, right? And they put it on this rail, like a V-shaped wedge, right? And then they'd have a fuse. And then they'd light it, and they'd try to direct it and guess the range by which they can light it, and then they could run. And when they run, you know, the fuse is still going, and then it's going to fire. And what they're trying to do is hit our vehicle with it, right? Fucking completely missed. Blew up off in the fucking distance, maybe like, probably like 80 meters away from the actual, what's it called? But, you know, hostile act, hostile intent, all that other shit. Definitely fucking whatever. And that was my first taste of fucking enemy engagement. And I was like, hell fucking yeah, that was cool. You know what I mean? Like, that was cool, but, you know, cool, but. And here's the thing that I'm going to tell you guys about too. Because you sit here and you go through this stuff and you're like, cool, but. And you wish for more. And that's what was going through my mind. Is I was like, come on, like let's let's slug it out kind of deal, right? End up, surviving that day. We move out a little bit further. We need to get out of that area, obviously, because it's too hostile to like set up camp. It's getting dark. We're like, all right, let's push out a couple clicks north into the wadi. We'll set up our 360 there, all this other stuff. Wait another day to see kind of what happens. The next few days, I don't necessarily know whether or not, we were out there for a good 3 weeks, so I don't know the day-to-day play, but I can just give you kind of like the wave tops of stuff that happens. The next thing I believe that happens is, is that what happened? Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah, I'll tell this one, and then we'll get into the other one. Cool. And then we'll stay in Musa Kela to end the show today. We push out to another town. Well, I'll tell that story too. There's a few good. This is like, I'm telling you, it's picking up right now. It's fucking awesome. Things start fucking going, right? We push out to another town the next day, probably about 5, 10, maybe about 15 clicks away from that little town that we were just in. Kilo had already been through this town before as well, and they had received some like pop shots from this town as they were like driving through and driving around, and they saw a lot of like moped. So moped activity. What I mean by this is this, right? The Taliban, where we would hear ICOM chatter, and then we would see two guys riding on mopeds and numerous mopeds, right? So these are like the Taliban TTPs. We would hear ICOM chatter and they would see us moving. Then we'd hear them talking on the radios and all this other stuff. And then we'd start to see them set up and get on mopeds, 2 military-age males on mopeds, and shoot different directions. And that's kind of how we knew like shit was going to pop off, right? So we would kind of go in and set ourselves up to do these things to get them to talk and then figure out where things are going and then get our eyes on and all this other stuff. So they're like, let's go into this village over here. So we go into this village and we set up a 360, probably about learning a little bit of a lesson from the day before. What's up, TJ? How was that date yesterday? Oh, wait. So we set up our 360 in like the middle of like this open kind of, it was like open desert just outside of this village. And we have, believe it or not, we have like a DEA. He's not a DEA agent. He was a DEA. I don't know actually if he was, but what he's doing is he's doing drug interdiction with us, right? So he's kind of like our drug expert. Super cool dude from Texas. Good dude. I'll keep his name kind of locked up. Set up our 360. I think we have probably like 13 vehicles in our 360 at this point in time. Pretty good convoy of our own dudes. Set it up probably like 20, 30 meters outside. Or not 20, 30 meters. Probably like 200 meters outside of this village this time. Go in. And again, you could kind of tell like something's a little fishy. They know that we know, and we know that they know, right? Like we already heard the ICOM chatter and all this other stuff. Yeah, I feel you. No worries. We'll talk about it later. Go into this town and you could tell that they're a little bit different from the last town. The last town was like aggressive. These guys were being like passive aggressive and like trying to be kind of like a little bit shady and not let us go through and do things. So, we automatically walk in there and we find like a butt ton of like a butt ton of like ammonia nitrate, I believe. And there's a whole bunch of stuff kind of going on, right? We see a whole bunch of bomb making material. We're like, you guys need to tell us what the fuck is going on now. We end up going down, like we split up one half of our platoon, it's not really a platoon. I think there's like 20 or 30 of us. And then the other half goes in a different direction. And then they call me over. Staff Sergeant Gantz over there. He's like, hey, Tucker, we need you here. You need to look at this stuff. We need to go through this shit. Like, we got one person that's already detained and inside kind of deal. And I get in there, and it's a 13-year-old kid. And the 13-year-old kid was caught with a pistol, I think, or something like that. And he was like moving it. And he was moving a few other things. So we had him kind of like in this back area. My interpreter was there. And I have to interrogate this kid. And it was kind of crazy because like the parents were all outside. And they're like, no. Like, oh, my God, all this other stuff. And they thought that we were going to beat him and all this other craziness. So we kind of made it look and made it seem like we were going to do that because we were playing on some of the fears of what they were doing. And we were like isolating them and moving them around and all this other crap and getting them all crazy. And then what's crazy is we end up getting a report from some of the people back in the, back in the 360 that are watching the vehicles. And they're like, hey, we're getting reports right now of thunderstorm collapsing. And there's like a wall of dust coming at us. There's a schmall that's what we called it, was a schmall coming in. At the same time, they're telling us the other half of our fucking platoon is over there telling us that they had just found all the ammonia nitrate, and that they were going to detonate it and all this other stuff. So they're over on the other side by this field. We're interrogating these people. We got a wall of dust that's coming in. Tensions are building because I'm interrogating this fucking kid, and we just caught him with a gun. And what that's delineating right now is the fact that these guys, these people, right, the Taliban in this village, what they were doing is they were trying to move weapons around to hide them from us. So now that we also know that there's these military-age males that were moving before we came in there, that they're moving weapons around right now, that there's a Taliban presence, that this kid was moving weapons around, and they got a whole bunch of fucking ammonium nitrate, right? So, like, hostilities are high. Now, the other thing that I want to mention is this village is a little bit different from other villages, right? It's not like a house over here and a house over here, and there's, like, some open areas. Like, it's like tight alleyways, and each house has their own wall around itself. So it's like everything's like a cubicle, and it's all like a maze. So we have people that are hanging out in one corner, like our guys that are hanging out in one corner. We got other guys that are hanging out in another corner, other guys that are in the alley. And we can't really see who's doing what. So it's really creepy because we know that they're moving weapons around. We know that they're really pissed off right now. We've already got the ICOM chatter. Like, tensions are really building. And then the fucking dust starts moving in, right? And this is literally like probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sun's out, sun's high. And this fucking dust storm comes and moves in, right? And we're trying to like figure out what to do, or we got to call it. And like I said, we're hearing the chatter. We know that they're talking about moving guns right now on the chatter. All this other stuff. That's what my interrogation was, is like I was trying to interrogate this kid and find out who's moving what kind of guns are being moved, like where they're moving them. Are they inside the village right now? Are they outside of the village? All this other stuff. Yes, and please do hit the like button as well. Thank you. That was very kind of you. And this dust storm moves in. And it starts off light and gradual, right? Like at first, it's just like a little bit of haze. You kind of look up and you could still see the sun through a little bit of this brown haze. And within fucking minutes, like it starts becoming fucking like blacked out. Like black, like bad, right? And Staff Sergeant Gantz sitting over there and he's like, yo, we got to move. And I think Staff Sergeant Riley's there too, Staff Sergeant from CAT team. He's like, you got to fucking figure out what to do with this kid. And we got to move, right? And I was like, all right, let's fucking cut him loose kind of deal. Like he's 14 years old. We just found like a fucking pistol. We kept the pistol and moved the pistol. We're like, we got to go. We don't know what's going on. We could get ambushed right now. He's like, yeah, good call. Let's go. We're sitting here talking on the fucking comms, and literally, next thing you know, you cannot see like a foot in, like you can't see a foot in front of you. Like arm out, actually you can see about arm's distance, and that's about it. So we're kind of like huddled up in this one area. We got dudes that are sitting on the fucking corners of all this other shit. All we can do is talk on comms, and you can't really see shit, right? So we're throwing our fucking masks on, we're throwing whatever on, and then that's when Stassar and Gant's like, night vision, right? So now we fucking take our nods, our night vision goggles, and we put our night vision goggles on, and that actually gives us the ability, because there's just enough fucking illumination from the sun still coming out, that we can actually see a little bit. So we throw on our IR lasers on our fucking M4s, and we use that as kind of like guides for us to be able to see who's going where and what direction we're moving. And we're all like literally with night vision goggles, grabbing people from the corner and like pulling them in and telling them to put their nods on and then putting them behind us. And we're moving around, and we got our fucking M4s all locked up, ready to rock and roll, because at any point in time, like these little alleyways that they're doing, these guys could fucking pop out, because we were hearing all this chatter. It was fucking nuts, right? So we're on high alert, high status right now. We're pushing all these fucking Afghan people out of the way. We told them to get back in their house and not fucking come out, or else they're going to get killed, right? Like that's how we had to do business, straight up. Like there's this state is too high right now. Like we already caught you guys moving guns. We know what's going on. Don't fucking come out of your house. We can't see shit. We're getting the fuck out of here kind of deal. If anyone fucking pops their head out, they're getting fucking smoked. No worries. You know what I mean? So we're moving, and we're trying to get going, and we got to go about 300, 400 yards to get to our vehicles. Like I said, very high state at this point in time as far as like tensions are concerned. So we're moving, and we get out into the open field. Can't see shit past like 3 feet, 4 feet. We see some of the IR lasers of the other guys moving towards the vehicles, right? The other guys that were on the outside of the area. And we start moving towards the vehicles, and we fucking have no clue. Like we can't see the vehicles. So we finally get to it. We finally get to like where the vehicles are, right? And everyone jolts and goes towards their vehicle. And I walk, and I keep walking because I was with somebody who went to their vehicle, but I didn't know where mine was. And I end up like going behind that vehicle and then turning around to try to find the 7-ton that I was supposed to go to, right? And Blaschke and all these other people. And I'm all alone. There's nobody. I can't see any more IR fucking lasers or anything like that. I'm near this one vehicle, and I start walking towards the other vehicle. Now, our vehicles are like, the proper distance is about 20 to 25 meters apart, right? For all this stuff. So I start walking in a direction that I think I can go to find another vehicle and start to lead myself towards it, right? And I keep walking, and I can't find any vehicles. So I'm like, fuck it. I can't see any of the other vehicles. So I'm going to walk back in the direction, right? So I walk back to that same vehicle, and I'm like, hey, where the fuck is the 7-ton? Right? And they're like, oh, dude, just like, it's over there. Go over there. I'm like, fuck. All right. So leave, and I start walking. And again, here I am. Like, this is one of the big things. You're in the middle of the desert. There's no actual features. You can't see shit. You can only see fucking one hand in front of you. You have no clue what direction you're moving, right? No one's there to like guide me in this area, right? So I'm sitting there in the middle of the desert, in the middle of this 360 with hostile fucking, like outside of this hostile, what's it called? And I can't see a thing, and I'm all by myself. And I'm like, I'm pissed. I'm livid because, again, here I am on the attachment. And nobody fucking remembers the attachment. Everyone always forgets about you, right? So these guys went to their fucking trucks and just kind of fucking spread out and didn't fucking remember me or anything like that. So here I am. I'm getting super pissed off. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm also like super scared. Like this is the most scared I think I've ever been in my life. And I don't know why. I mean, in a way, thinking about it now, it makes a lot of sense. But like, there was no worse feeling than being in a war zone outside of a place where we could be getting fucking ambushed right now. and then feeling completely alone where you can't see and that people forgot about you. And I was just sitting there and I was like, fuck, man. I'm like livid, right? So I'm like frantically, like not running, but I'm like moving fast to try to find these places. I'm like kind of like not hyperventilating, but it's like the first time in my life I've ever felt anxiety because I'm just like getting so frustrated. And I can't find shit. And I go up to another vehicle, finally find another vehicle. And I'm like, yo, like, let me in at least. Right. And they're like, we don't have any room. This is the Matt V. There's 4 of us in here already. I was like, where the fuck is the goddamn 7-ton? He's like, I'm pretty sure it's right over here. I'm like, get on the fucking horn with Blasky right now and fucking find out where he is, like where it is, right? In this, what's it called? So anyway, long story short, it takes me probably like another 5 more minutes to finally find the fucking 7-ton. I get in the 7-ton and I'm just fucking like pissed. Anyway, I feel a lot better because we end up, what's it called? But anyway, sit in the 7-ton and finally, it probably takes about an hour or maybe less for the, the dust to settle down. And by this point in time, it's like 4:30. Dust settles down. We can't move because what was happening with the other team, come to find out, the other team that was out there, what they were doing was they were stacking all the fucking ammonia nitrate that they had found outside in the field, and they were about to detonate it, right, with a whole bunch of det cordon C4. That's what we would do when we were out in these areas. We couldn't just take it and fucking go with it. We would actually fucking detonate it and get rid of it. So we had a whole bunch of shit already attached to it. EOD's like, we're not fucking leaving this stack, right? We already got stuff attached. We got to fucking rock and roll. So anyway, sun's out again. Everything's cool. Everything's settled. We set up again, kind of deal. We don't need to go and actually do like a no kidding patrol this time. We're like, fuck it. No more ICOM chatter. No more anything. Let's just detonate it. Let's move out and let's go and kind of camp out for the night until tomorrow kind of deal. Cause it's about to get fucking, or we're gonna, just wait to see and hear any more ICOM chatter to lead the, So that was like day 3 or 4. Anyway, with that said, we are now past the hour mark. Next week, we will start off still on the same little Nowzad Musekela, but things start to fucking heat up a lot more. A lot more fucking cool patrols, a lot more action. And then I have a fucking killer story to tell you that's actually a pretty popular story in Marine Corps legend that happened on this deployment, pretty much like right in front of my eyes too. So very, very excited to tell next week's story. And then we'll get into even further. I'm telling you guys, the next few weeks are things that you're not going to want to miss because the stories just keep getting fucking better and better and better. A lot of good stuff's going to start popping up. Things are really going to start fucking kicking off. And, I'm pretty excited to tell you guys these things. So, as one of the late great individuals in the chat here said, Mr. Antonio, hit the old like button as well. If you haven't done so. Also, like I talk about, I'm kind of, I've been doing this stuff now for a couple months. I'm kind of tired of shilling. I'm kind of tired of like throwing stuff out there. You guys know what I'm all about. I fucking run a website called The War Tribe. If you guys are interested, feel free to join. If you guys see the value in this stuff, fucking share it. What else? I don't know. Donate some money to me. That'd be fucking cool. Yeah. So I will not be live with John Fitch on Wednesday. Unfortunately, I'm moving. I have to downsize. It happens in life. No big deal. I'm kind of happy. I got to go through and clean up some stuff in my life and clean out some things and kind of minimalize in a way. The new studio, what I have set up, I'm hoping is going to be a little bit better. We'll see. I don't know what I have set up exactly yet, but it's going to be good. Anyway, hoping for next Saturday, but we'll see. Because I'm going to try I'm going to try to get out to Phoenix for Hot Dude Con with Modern Life Dating. I'm going to try to get out there, but my schedule's pretty tight right now, so we'll do that. But I should be up and running next week, next Sunday, for War Story Sunday. That's my game plan. So stay tuned for that. All right, guys? With that said, I'll do my best to see you next week. If not next week, just know that that's probably because internet being set up and all that other stuff, but I'll let you guys know. With that said, see you guys later. Leave some cool comments, too. Let me know what you guys like the most about this story today. All right? We'll see.